All right. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our final Word for Word event of the season, featuring three of SNHU's very own graduates in the BA, MA, and MFA Creative Writing programs. I am Jacob Powers, here with Paul Witcover, and we are Associate Deans in Liberal Arts. This past year has been like no other, and many of us have found ourselves needing to adapt to seismic changes in our daily lives. Despite new challenges and obstacles, what remained steadfast for many was a need and desire to continue their education. And the task, which seemed insurmountable in many respects, was hardly met with vigor and drive by many SNHU students. And despite experiencing a once-in-a-century pandemic, many are graduating this year. So it is with profound respect that I find myself in the company of students and graduates who, despite so much change this past year, grew as writers and scholars. So today we're celebrating all creative writing graduates and highlight three in particular who have continued to work on their craft in increasingly challenging times. So congratulations to all, and what an honor it is to have you here. So a little bit of housekeeping stuff before we get started here. We'll be introducing them in just a moment, but today's session is going to be recorded. You can avoid being recorded by keeping your microphone on mute and not typing in the chat. However, by doing either, you are consenting to being recorded. The chat window will be made available for audience participation and questions. If you have a question for a specific presenter, please include their name with your question in the chat so we can better direct the discussion. We encourage you to submit questions via the chat window to be addressed during the general Q&A session. However, due to time constraints, please understand that we may not get to every question. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first reader for the night, Amanda Pirelli. Amanda is a professional photographer and writer from Northeast Pennsylvania. She's currently working on projects including world building and drafting a science fiction trilogy, scenario writing for an independent game company, and continued work on the collection of poems and prose from Fly in a Jar, excerpts of which will be read during the SNHU Word for Word event tonight. Before we get started, Amanda, I just had a quick question for you before you share your work with us tonight. It's basically one that I think everyone is often asked. What inspired you to write this particular work that you plan on sharing?
My intentions were to write with the idea of separating self and trauma as a means to heal. And so in the small collection I'm reading tonight, it's written with that idea in mind. And I'm sure if you listen, you'll notice that lack of I and that lack of connection as a writer to those moments.
Awesome. That sounds great. Well, very excited to have you here. I will let you take the stage and stuff, and welcome. And I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you so much. 3 or 4. Forest Hall antiques on the corner, Broad and Hartford, a faint or fabricated memory, driving past the Grand Union, the Hotel Facher across the street, a bench in the adjacent park. The Grand Union at the end of the block, pronounced onion by a tow-headed, blue-eyed child, naive of what it means to not remember being missing for an afternoon, carried off by her father, she's told. Where the small town grid fades, the mountains begin, broken only by stretches of highway, connecting a population just over 1,000 with the bustle of New York City. 17. On the northern end of the anthracite coal field, a Wilkes-Barre mother's basement, the one with the television encased in wood, that plaid, scratchy couch, trimmed with mahogany, and a lock on the door. They met at a Christian summer camp upstate. The girl's mother sets up the date, texting the boy like she's 17 again, or her daughter. Are you sure you want to? Yes, no, yes, no. Cherry-popped, V-card, cha-ching, an unhonest young woman. He treats her to 120 on the highway, grinning, laughing, enthused by invincibility, the thrill of near death. Did it feel good? Her mother accuses. No, she lies. 18. At the edge of the woods, writing, waiting for inspiration. The slow shiver of ferns, pressed by something within the forest, waiting to be taken, unable to leave, hoping something or someone will step out, take her away, any place else. A dire need to be anywhere else but home. 27. Lifelong, her mother reminds her that Poppy was abusive, a master carpenter, a war hero who used his last 85 cents to return to the girl he loved, Emma Jean, but cheated often, built them a home to raise 10 children, back to back to back, who all have health insufficiencies, had cancer, who all withhold their sexual abuse secrets until the very end. Poppy's funeral, the coldest, driest days that winter, lined up to enter Rasmussen Funeral Home, nestled between the feed mill and an antique shop on the rocky cliff side of Narrowsburg, where the river's waters are quiet and frozen over still. A deep sigh of relief, and the words can be uttered, fought over among siblings, rape and money. 29. An adult who recoils to be touched by her mother or disagreements, or both and just the thought. An avoidance habit, a conflict avoidance habit as a means to self-preservation, a tendency towards self-medication, a deep yearning to self-destruct by going back, visiting, a desire to remember or know for certain if what she's been told is the truth, or another fabricated memory of a broken mother. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Amanda. That was wonderful, and I really appreciate it. I often don't get to hear poetry read aloud, and especially since we've all been inside the past 15 months. So it's wonderful to hear it again. So thank you again. Next, I'd like to introduce our MA reader, a Master's in Creative Writing reader. This is Jamie Walsh. Jamie is a yoga instructor and grades English composition papers for Grand Canyon University. She is also a mom to a rambunctious blended family of 5 kiddos, ages 1 to 11, wife to a SWAT team police sergeant, and a recent recipient of a Master's of Arts in English and Creative Writing from SNHU. Crafting narrative, nonfiction pieces, and reading punchy memoirs brings her joy. When not writing meditation pieces, she loves hardcover books from self-improvement to crime dramas, most anything David Sedaris has penned, and true crime podcasts. She hopes to start teaching undergraduate English courses and send out her first collection of stories this year. So thank you so much for joining us, Jamie. I loved your bio here, and it seems like there's a few things in here that could clearly influence your writing and everything like that. What about this particular reading that you'll be sharing with us tonight, though, has inspired you to write it? And how did you bring your craft to the subject matter?
So my subject dealing with grief and essentially being at my parents' funeral, and I chose to write about it in my capstone for personal reasons, and that personal reason, one being just to share with my kids a slice of my life and a big event that definitely shaped me, and to kind of give them a glimpse of that experience.
That makes sense. Yes, I often think of that as well. It's important, and that's a good reason, I think, to pen it and stuff. So I'm happy to hear it. Thank you so much for joining us. I will go ahead and give you the floor and everything.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. The piece is titled, "Don't Talk to Strangers." Girls, now is not the time to cry. And Carol said as she found my sister and I weeping in the church bathroom. The service is about to begin. Now is the time to cry, I mumbled to my sister Jen, at a tone that only she could hear. Jen squeezed my hand. She was my comrade today. Our aunt was devastated over the loss as well. However, her emotions were well packaged, just like her neat and tidy home. My emotions were currently streaming down my cheeks, carving white lines in my Clinique foundation, and further smudging what was supposed to be waterproof mascara. Overnight, our aunt had become our new authority figure. We didn't have parents anymore. We had to listen to someone. We may have just completed our freshman and junior years of college, yet in all reality, we were still codependent babies. Maybe it was because we were homeschooled and sheltered, or maybe because one is never old enough to lose one's parents just hours apart. Their accident immediately stunted my emotional growth. All I wanted to do was cry or throw a massive tantrum protesting their loss. There we were in the bathroom, listening to friends practicing a hymn that they were about to sing for the funeral. Aunt Carol led the way out of the bathroom towards a small chapel. We were stopped by what I hope was a well-meaning, but clearly out of her mind, homeschool mom. If your parents' death brings just one person to Jesus, it'll be worth it, she said with wide doe eyes filled with sincerity and salesmanship. Nope, no, cancel that. You do not say that to grieving orphaned daughters. The year was 2000, before cancel culture was a thing. And as much as I may oppose the idea of censorship, I sure wish the concept could be used in regards to muting the oddities that people felt they needed to share. My mom would have stopped this lady in her denim wearing tracks. My mother would have given her a mouthful about how a statement like that is the furthest thing two grieving girls needed to hear. Did our family have a strong Christian faith? Yes. But after hearing that, all I felt was a clear lack of faith in humanity. I swallowed hard. I didn't say anything. I just kept walking. I had to sit down. I felt dizzy. I was trying to choke back tears and trying to look out, all put together, all at the same time. I didn't care, and I cared all too much all at once. The seeds of people pleasing and worrying about what other people thought of me were implanted deeply into my soul that day. It would become a festering weed. I would need to pick and learn how to annihilate it over the years. But in that moment, all I could do was smile and pick at the Velcro on my wrist brace. The strangeness of an accident that killed both my parents, and yet one that I walked away with without a scratch, besides my broken wrist. God has great plans for you. That is why he saved your life, another homeschool mom bestowed upon me earlier. If they were such great plans, then why did he have to kill my parents in the process so they wouldn't be around to witness my life? What if I wanted a mediocre existence if that meant I could keep my mom and dad? Did the homeschool mom think of that? I was beginning to sense a pattern of insanity with these comments that people felt they needed to share. It felt like an alternative universe of insensitivity. Everything felt like an alternative universe. A few days before the service, I headed to the mall, the same mall we used to visit with our mom on her lunch breaks. Jen and I both found long, straight black skirts to wear from the Gap. She chose a periwinkle blue rib sweater. I headed to the Limited. What special occasion are you shopping for today? A cheerful salesgirl asked. She was doomed. My parents' funeral. Oh, I'm so sorry. I could see each of the 3 exclamation marks of her honest sympathy and discomfort. I found a sleeveless black blouse with a choker collar, and I was beginning to regret the collar aspect as my throat felt as if 2 giant hands were choking it from the inside. I wanted to cry. I couldn't. I guess the tears were only able to come out earlier. And the service was beautiful. It was lovely. It was long. It was 3 hours of hymns and coworker after coworker sharing stories, friends and loved ones giving us messages of hope and memories to cherish. They shared how my father had the best jokes with no punchlines and how my mother went out of her way to make you feel warm and welcomed. And I knew this. She fought hard to keep our homes group open to families of all religions. We sang Amazing Grace. It was one of my father's favorite hymns, and I let the lyrics wash over me. Grace. I prayed for grace to cover for me. I was frightened. I was worried how I'd paid for college. I'd wonder how I'd learn to stand up for myself. And then the service ended before I was ready. Time to greet everyone. Like a formal line when witnesses at a wedding, Jennifer and I stood mourning our past, present that we'd never have chosen, and a future that scared the hell out of me. We robotically shook hands and nodded heads. I felt like I had to package up my emotions and tie it up with a bow to make everyone else feel more comfortable. The feeling of thirst dried out my throat, and I started to offer my own condolences to other people. The same sense of extreme thirstiness that I had felt in the ER the night we lost my parents reemerged. I hoped the comment about leading someone to Jesus would be the last of the oddities of the day. Leave it to a homeschool boy to challenge that. There he was with his blonde hair parted high to the side and a swagger he must have learned from his secular friends. Jamie, I haven't seen you in years. There's probably a reason for that. Wow, you look really grown up and great. He was my same age. I wanted to puke over his false sense of authority. But it was not just him, it was so many others. I felt as if everyone had become a new sense of authority, whether I asked them or not. There were whispers and statements about how people thought I would party and squander my parents' savings. Rather than buck the system of judgment, I slowly bowed to it and became the model good girl. My grief had exhausted me from any idea of rebellion into a world of goody two shoe compliance. I never drank in college. Instead, I became chapter president. I volunteered. I graduated just to prove I was fine. As a young child, I was anything but compliant, and my mother loved to remind me how I once shot her friend in the face with a water gun. As we left the chapel, I closed my eyes, sending my memory back to that summer day. Don't shoot your water gun at anyone's face, my mother reminded my tan 6-year-old self, as I did even worse damage with an unrelenting glance aimed at her friend named Norma. My eyes shot my mom a look of half-assed agreement, and I continued to stare down Norma. I'm sure my polka dot ruffled swimsuit was doing me a major disservice in my attempts to frighten her away, so maybe the green water gun would do the trick. Norma was weird. Her name was weird. Her presence in our home was weird. She did not bring with her any kids of her own. My mother was a homemaker, a homeschool mom housed in Phoenix, Arizona. I could hardly believe she was a native New Yorker once. Norma was taking my mother's attention off me. Didn't she know that you're supposed to watch your kids around water? I mean, clearly Norma was not from Arizona. Here in Phoenix, every house had a swimming pool and tall, tan pool decking that scraped off any foot calluses and imprinted your butt with adolescent cellulite. Every home needed the weekly news reminder to watch your kids around water. And yet there she sat, Norma, with her red toenails dipped in my pool, teasing the water with no intent to actually swim. Norma was making my mother remind me to do something I did not, or that I did want to do so badly. So what was the worst that could happen? This was the 1980s, and my mother subscribed to the non-speaking stance. My mother's command was only set in stone for her. I was just told not to do something, and I, Jamie Lou Boone Lauren, subscribed to the religion of tell me what I can't do so I can do it tenfold. I shot Norma. Oh my God, Norma's lips reacted to the pool water dripping into her mouth, and her eyes hissed at me with disbelief. Take that, Norma. Parents tell you not to talk to strangers. What they forget to mention is that in the most heart-aching situations, friends all of a sudden feel like they are strangers and say the most insensitive things. Loved ones will say stuff that'll make you wish they were strangers, so you would no longer be allowed to talk to them. My dad in particular reminded us to take a key and shove it in someone's eye if they ever tried to hurt or kidnap us. Now, why a 6-year-old would have a car key handy is a little odd, but I went with it and I knew my dad meant business. Protect yourself, be smart, think, my dad would say on the daily. So why in God's name should I have to be pleasant to the stranger named Norma? I was proud I shot Norma. She never came to visit again. Taking a water gun to the homeschool moms was out of a question. So maybe I could learn to muster the same gusto of my 6-year-old self to survive life without my parents and all the comments that got entangled with coping with the new life without them. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. That was wonderful. The line that stood out to me in particular, I really liked was, and I don't remember it exactly, but it was when you were standing in line with your sister and you were mourning the past, present, and future. I think that is a very profound statement in with mourning and stuff that we often forget about. That is, it is something that goes both ways, from past, present, and future, and it's something that really I think resonates nowadays too, especially with us coming out of this pandemic and stuff. So thank you so much for sharing. It was really great. I am going to hand over the host duties and stuff to my colleague Paul now, who will be introducing our next reader. So take it away, Paul.
Thanks, Jacob. And thank you to our first two readers, Amanda and Jamie. Just really wonderful stuff. I'm really proud to introduce our MFA graduate, Lenormie Manuel. Lenormie earned her BA in English Language and Literature in 2017 and her MFA in Creative Writing in March 2021. As a native of the Central Appalachian region, she writes for and about her culture and its people. Her thesis novel, The Price of Bread and Shoes, is based on oral histories of events in the coal fields of southern West Virginia during the 1920s and is currently on submission. Her research for this work was funded in part by a grant from the Kentucky Foundation for Women. She has published a number of short stories and one essay that celebrates Appalachia as a vibrant and diverse culture. She and her husband live in central Kentucky. Tonight, she is reading a selection from her thesis novel. And Lenormie, before you do that, I just wanted to, first of all, congratulate you and welcome you, but also to ask, you, I feel from reading that introduction that place is extremely important to you as a writer. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about how that has informed the piece that you'll be reading tonight.
A sense of place, especially when you're dealing with a subculture, with a historical culture, the sense of place is very important, because although the things that happen in this book could happen in New York City, and actually did happen in New York City during the early part of this pandemic, it is the sense of place that brings it all together. The time right before the Great Depression, the coal mining, right after World War I, right after the influenza epidemic, all of these things come together in this one small coal camp on the New River in West Virginia to set the stage for a fictional exposition of real events.
I think that tees it up really well. So I'll just step back and let you take it away.
Thank you. In the excerpt I'm going to read, Alifair Sizemore Sloan, who is 19 years old and has been married for 8 weeks, is traveling from her home in Abingdon, Virginia, which is on the banks of the Holston River, to West Virginia, which she has never visited. And it is a completely different landscape, and this is the first time she has ever left home. And so we're going to catch up with her while she is on the train. The landscape changed as soon as they cleared White Oak Junction. The track, carved from a near vertical hillside, perched on the edge of a ravine that ended in a boulder-strewn creek. The combine leaned into every curve, wheels screaming against the rails. When the track straightened, it swayed like a drunk trying to remain upright. It reminded Alifair of ice skating on a neighbor's pond, of playing crack the whip and laughing at the end of the line skaters who, losing mittens and grips and gloves, broke free and went flying across the ice. The combine was the last car in the train and the lightest. She imagined it severed from the heavily loaded freight cars, speeding like a bullet through the trees and into the water below. She was glad her seat did not overlook the ravine. The view from her window was of a land that spring seemed to have forgotten. Back home on the North Fork of the Holston, the redbuds had already bloomed and gone, and the dogwood trees were budding. Daffodils held their ground while tulips thrust their pointed spears skyward. On Clinch Mountain, rising like a sentinel above the river valley, the new growth of deciduous trees glowed bright green and yellow against the stately dark green of the conifers. But here, in these deep, close-folded mountains, spring was a drab painting in a palette of grays and browns. Slender, naked trees rose from deep layers of fallen leaves. Water dripped from the rounded edges of black-streaked sandstone left exposed by the building of the railroad. The only color here came from the glossy green leaves of the May-apples that emerged from the undergrowth, unfurling their leaves like half-opened umbrellas, and a few sparse sarvice trees, their ghostly clusters of tiny white blooms clinging to leafless branches like restless spirits. Without warning, the combine yawed hard to the right. Alifair's suitcase skittered forward toward her feet. She caught it between her ankles and kept a firm grip on it while the car yawed again, this time a hard left that tossed her against the window. The shrieking din of the wheels subsided, replaced by a different note as the engineer applied the brakes. That was the S-curve, the salesman told her. It's downhill to the New River from here, about 5 more minutes. In the seats near the front, men familiar with the route were laughing at the red-faced boys who, caught by surprise, had shouted when the train pitched back and forth. From the baggage end of the car came the sounds of crates dragged across the floor and of parcels thumped against the wall. A moment later, the door that divided the combine opened, and one of the firemen thrust his head into the passenger compartment. Chimami Creek, coming up. 15-minute stop to exchange passenger and freight. Well, that's me. The salesman across the aisle stood up and grabbed his satchel from the overhead bin, catching it just in time to keep it from dropping onto the head of the young man in the seat ahead of him. Sorry about that, brother. You for Chimami Creek too? Quinamont, the younger man answered. Been there. The salesman resumed his seat, balancing his satchel on his lap with one hand and cramming his battered snap-brim fedora onto his head with the other. There's an Italian woman runs a little restaurant in Quinamont, best pasta this side of Chicago. Alifair dug in her purse, looking for her compact. Her fingers brushed the envelope that contained Travis's last letter to her, the one that said, I got us a house, and had been folded around a $10 bill. She had intended to read it just once more before the train reached Chimami Creek, but now there was no time. It didn't matter. She had already read and reread it so often that she practically knew its contents by heart. The paper was fragile, almost separating along the folds. She found her compact and opened it, expecting to see a frazzled, travel-worn woman staring back at her. But the face in the mirror was familiar and only a bit wary. Her father's milk blue eyes, her mother's snub nose, a few golden freckles across her cheek, and the barest hint of rosy red lipstick on her lips. She checked the tilt of her hat and brushed a few stray hairs, the color of pale honey, behind her ears. Alifair knew without looking that the boys at the front of the car were watching, but without the privacy of a ladies' room, like the one on the Virginian line, it was either her compact or the questionable toilet. She gave herself a final critical stare and snapped the compact shut. The train slowed to a pace no faster than a man could walk. Steam rolled past Alifair's window, briefly obscuring her view of the thinning trees. When the steam cleared, she pressed her forehead against the glass, hoping to glimpse the town. A scrawny, savage dog stared back at her from the shelter of the woods. By the look of him, he was no one's pet and never had been. Lean and rangy, he lingered on the hillside, immobile, watching Alifair with cold, fierce eyes. His ribs thrust against his skin, the distance between them clearly visible beneath his brindled coat. In his mouth, he carried a bloodied rabbit. The rabbit was not quite dead. Alifair shuddered and turned her head to look out the windows across the aisle, even though she saw little but trees and glimpses of sky. The resigned look in the still living eyes of the rabbit was vivid in her mind. It bothered her more than the gore of its blood-speckled fur. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Lenormand. That was just phenomenal, just beautiful descriptive writing in the service of place and of character. I just loved it. And I wish you the best of luck with placing this book, because I know there's an audience for it. I can see in the chat. So I'm gonna move on to the next portion, and we'll be back to talk with our readers in a Q&A in a bit. So Lenormand, if you can turn your camera off, great, thank you. I'm now going to introduce Our next panelist, our next guest is Sonia Moffat. Sonia is going to be presenting The Business of Writing. Curious? Sonia is an early engagement partner at SNHU, and her role is to partner with academic leaders and cross-functional teams at the university in an effort to create experiential learning opportunities that prepare SNHU grads for long-term career success. The culmination of her work experiences includes 4 years of talent acquisition, 2 years of employer relations, 5 years of career consultation, and over 10 years in brand marketing, a skill that she uses to help job seekers create a demand for their professional brand. She obtained her undergraduate degree from the University of Michigan in communications with a minor in PR, and she possesses her master's in human resources management. In addition, Sonia is a certified HR professional and global career development facilitator. She's joining us tonight to share some insights for writers that she compiled alongside her colleagues during the Write Challenge. And Sonia, take it away.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you guys for having me this evening. I hope that everybody's doing great. I want to thank Amanda, Jamie, and Lenormie for sharing your stories with us tonight. And it's just really inspiring to hear other creatives. And so tonight, what I'm going to talk about is a little bit different because I'm going to come from the career perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with you. Hopefully you can see that. If you can give me indication in the chat box, if you're able to see that okay. And can you hear me okay? Just really quick check in the chat box. All right. So again, thank you guys for sharing your story. Now I'm going to present a small case study to start off my presentation. And in doing so, I want you to critically think about the scenario that I'm going to pose tonight. I want to ask you to follow up with some questions that we're going to go through. And hopefully that exercise will reveal some things to you about the business of writing and how you should rethink how you approach the business of writing in 2021. So let's get into the case study. Many aspiring writers can imagine themselves arriving in New York City and absorbing the sounds, the sights, the energy and excitement around them, and they aspire to be the next bestseller. And while all things are possible, there is a lot of competition, and the publishing industry has seen its challenges over the past decade. So how does one earn a living while pursuing their dreams? Well, as we heard from our 3 presenters today, they work. Amanda works as a gamer, as a storyteller for a gaming company. Jamie, she will be teaching undergraduate. And Lenormie, she writes about the stories, and she is actually a writer who writes full time. So there are definitely options out there. So when we're thinking about this, let's take a journey to the other side of the desk. Now, you're an editorial director or on an editorial committee at a major book publisher whose sales revenues are declining. So if your team doesn't identify stories that will compel customers to buy from you, the company may have to lay off some personnel, including yourself, or it could potentially go out of business. So your team receives more than 200 manuscripts and or proposals each week. And your responsibility is to read them and identify the next 10 big sellers for your publishing company. So you start to read. And if you are not hooked or interested after 5 minutes, you move on to the next manuscript or proposal. You barely have time to read them all in a given week. So now I want to ask you a few questions. So on screen, you saw the Mentimeter. Hopefully you guys pulled out your phone, and let me just pull this back up just in case you didn't. You can pull out your phone or your tablet, or maybe go to your browser. You can do that by hitting the Windows key on your keyboard. Either way, go to www.menti.com. And when you arrive there, enter the code 7507-8730. I'll leave that up on the screen for a couple more seconds for you. That gives you some time to think about the case study as well. So hopefully you are there. And if not, the address will be on the next page as well, okay? Right here at the top. So with all of the manuscripts in a given week, would you offer each of those writers meaningful feedback? Go ahead and cast your vote. I see the votes are coming in. All right, so you guys can continue to vote, but the consensus looks like the majority of you would not be able to offer meaningful feedback on all of those manuscripts. I don't even know if you'll be able to get through them all. So let's go to the next question. We're going to go ahead and thank you for those of you who voted. The next question is, if you identify potential works of interest, would you write those writers with meaningful feedback? For example, what they did right and how they can improve. All right. I think more people are in here now. I can tell by the voting, getting more participation. This is great. All right. So majority of you say yes, I would reach out to them because I'm interested. Of course, I'm going to reach out to them. So wonderful. All right, let's go to the next question. So would you reach out to successful authors that you've published in the past for new manuscripts? Would that be a better business strategy? I guess it depends on how successful they were, right? All right, so the majority of you say, yes, I would reach out to someone who's been successful for us in the past. At least one of those 10 books can be a success potentially. All right, let's go to the next question. If you hear about a business leader, a celebrity, or an influencer with an established following, would you reach out to them with a book offer? And as you're answering these questions, I also want you to think about why. We won't be able to get into the why because this is a short presentation, but would you reach out to them with a book offer? And if so, just kind of think in the back of your mind, why? So this is a little bit better. So now we've seen a closer difference between our yeses and nos. So this is really good. It's interesting. All right. Of the 4 options that we just talked about, which would be the most effective way to identify the next 10 big bestsellers for your publishing company? Everybody's thinking on this one. I can tell you're thinking about it. Gotta read through the options, right? All right, the votes are coming in. So it's good. So the majority of you are saying that you would contact former bestsellers for the publisher to submit another book. So that would be one of 10 that you would have to get to in order to get the revenues that will save your company. So that's very interesting. All right. None of these are wrong answers. My last question for you to think about is, how open are you to using your writing talents in a traditional work setting? All right. Thank you so much for your participation on these polls, because really wanted to be able to talk to you about the business of writing. And really, a lot of people, when they graduate out the program, and some of the career advisors are having conversations with people who are going through the programs. I'm not sure how many of you have actually spoke with a career advisor here at SNHU Career. But one of the consensus is that a lot of people really want to write. That's your passion. This is what you want to do. You've come here for a reason. You want to be able to take that degree that you're working very hard for and really translate it into a career that you're passionate about. And it makes sense. especially as creative writers, you definitely want to be able to get your work in front of people who may enjoy reading the stories that you have to tell. Up here on the screen, I have your talented writer. Try not to typecast your career. In doing so, it's going to place limitations on your potential. So it's really good to see that the majority of you are open to pursuing writing in a different format. So what I'm going to share with you here is a book that I put together with some colleagues here. So I'm not sure what you were thinking in terms of the why, but I hope that you don't typecast your career. The fact is that you all possess your own unique perspectives. And through your written work, you're able to amplify your creative voice. And sometimes it can be disheartening if you're not making advancement in your career as quickly as you would like to, in the exact same way that you want to do it. And I completely understand that. So whether you are open to expanding your options as a writer or laser focused on pursuing your creative career full time, you will need to develop a personal brand strategy. And this is whether you're an introvert or an extrovert. There are some best practices that can help you stand out as a creative. And I hope tonight spawns some ideas for you. I will not solve all of the world's problems in 15 minutes, but if you need one-on-one assistance, I do want to let you know that we have a team of career advisors that are here to help walk you step by step through this process. So I'm going to give you some information, and then following my presentation, I'm going to drop a link into the chat box, and it's going to be the resource that I'm going to fly through very quickly now. Okay, so just sit back and relax as we go through this. Now, you might possess a number of skills or talents, and there's a young lady on YouTube. Her name is Bailey Sarian, and I don't know how many of you have heard of her, but Bailey is a YouTuber, and her YouTube channel, she sits there and she sits there and does her makeup while she's telling horror stories, true crime stories. And so it's a really creative way for her to build her brand. And Bailey actually has over 4 million subscribers. So that's pretty interesting if you're thinking about this from a business perspective. So if you are a creative, you need to figure out that you can, I'm sorry, I need to turn her off, that you can be as creative as a Bailey Sarian. And so I'm not going to go through her whole thing here, but I do want to just kind of glaze through it very quickly. She sits here and she does these true crime stories, and she's putting on makeup. So she's literally transforming right before your eyes. So I don't want you to copycat what she's doing, but it's just something to think about. If you write true crime, maybe you could partner with her. And this is partnering with an influencer if you're into social media. So we have a lot of resources that will be given to you at the end of this presentation today, but it's something to think about. If not even doing that, but thinking of your own way to get out in front of your audience and find who your audience is. Having an established following makes you more valuable to a publishing company, because basically your following is going to read your book. They're going to buy your book, whether it's digitally or the hard copy. They're going to come to your pop-ups, whether you're doing book signings in different bookstores across the nation. So you just want to be very strategic about how you approach your writing career, and you can do this. So we talk about the gig economy. You'll get a video on that, the elevator pitch, using social media to help to expand your brand. These are all webinars that you'll get when you get your download here, but you really want to get into being able to articulate your value proposition to the businesses, to these publishing companies, to these, let's say if you want to write for a film company, or even like Amanda, she writes for a game company. So however you want to approach this, the more you have out there and the more you're able to reach out and connect with people, whether you're an introvert or an extrovert, the better. So I know you don't want to put your work out there because you want to protect your intellectual property, and that is very important. But start establishing those relationships. You can even do that with each other this evening. Pop your email address into the chat box and start talking to one another. Even on SNHU Connect, they have a book club and they have other creative sources clubs that you can become a part of. So start to branch out, take advantage of this national college that we have here. and really start to build out your network. So the creative writer, we have some resources for you. One of our advisory board members, her name is Joy Gibson, and Joy Gibson actually graduated out of our program. She writes for a mortgage company. Never thought that she would. When you click on this video, when you get the resource, you're going to be able to see her story. And she's actually quite funny. So I think you guys will enjoy that. But Bonnie Fox is an adjunct instructor here. And she's also compiled some other resources for you to be able to look at as you're going through this. And so we wanted to make sure that you were able to take away something from this experience tonight as you move forward as graduates out of this program, that you have something to go back to. And our career services are free and a lifetime. So take advantage of that if you need to really think through some things and maybe get out of your own way, because sometimes we have blinders on, so we're not thinking about things. Make sure your readers are on the hook, and your readers are anyone who's reading your work. Writer's block can be a huge problem, especially when you're very stressed out about finances or stressed out about not getting the feedback that you maybe are seeking from publishing companies. I really hope with the case study you understand that it is a business. So now that you've seen the other side of the desk tiny bit, hopefully it gives you some insight in how you can strategically forge those relationships, create value, and go to them with followers or subscribers or readers already in hand. All right. But these are some resources that you can use just in case you're a little bit stressed out. Remember this process. What you have to say, your voice and your talent, right? So you are amplifying your voice through your creative expression. So just because you're being rejected, you're feeling rejected, it's not necessarily rejection. It's redirection of your strategy and how you're going to approach your career as a writer. So we give you some more resources in this as well. Again, more resources, so be present. If you're getting feedback, take that feedback positively. And sometimes there are some things that go on in your mind and you start to doubt yourself. Don't doubt yourself. Keep going. If you have billions of people in the world and there's one Bailey Syrian, and she has 4 million subscribers, that means billions of other people are not subscribed to her, right? So there's still an opportunity for her to grow. And I'm saying that to say to you that your audience is out there. You just need to find them. So hopefully the resources that we provide here will help you to do that. And then when you're thinking about, well, who is my audience? Have I submitted to the right publisher? Because sometimes you have to look at the publishing company you're submitting to. Do you need a literary agent? Have you built your following? Do you have the appropriate marketing mix? Are you aligning yourself with the strategic allies that can help you get to where you're going? Are you an influencer? And do you have the right mix of social media? These are all things that you want to think about, because maybe there are some blind spots. And if you're getting feedback from whoever you're getting it from, don't let it break you, especially if it's a negative feedback or what they call constructive criticism. You know, feedback allows you the opportunity to identify and rectify any gaps. In terms of business writing, we have some resources for you on that. We also have some resources for you in terms of writing careers. So you want to free your mind and don't typecast yourself. Don't say this is all I'm going to do and that's it. There are so many other things that you can do as a writer. So we have some resources for you on that. And also continue to learn, even beyond your degree. Get involved with professional associations. Pam Boutselis is a senior content writer here, and she has also provided some resources for you. So expand your professional network here at SNHU. You can also join any of these professional associations. And from me and the Right team, I want to thank you guys for having me this evening. And I hope that when you download this information, it'll be something that will be transformational for each of you. Good luck to you all. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonia. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure everyone else does who's here as they take the next step with their writing process and stuff after graduation. We have 10 minutes left right now, so we'd like to open it up for some Q&A and stuff for anyone who had any questions for any of the readers or Sonia tonight or anything in general. You're welcome to post in the chat. Just a reminder, we have a limited amount of time here and stuff, so we'll not be able to get to all of them, but we'll try to focus on the highlights and stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the chat.
And also, if you have a chat, if you have a question directed to a particular reader, make sure to indicate that in your question in the chat.
So there was a question earlier for Sonia. Sonia, after graduation, can students use career services?
Yes, absolutely. This is a free and lifetime service.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And there will, for those asking if there will be a recording of the event, we are recording it and stuff, and there will be a link available as well. Sonia, do people make individual appointments with you as well concerning career services as well?
With me specifically, no. I do represent the career services, but I'm not a career advisor in that role. However, we do have a career advising team, and you can call at any time. I'm going to put the number here in the chat box for you, 888-672-1458, and you call in and you will be connected with a career advisor. If one isn't immediately available, then they will definitely have someone reach out to you. You can also send your resume in to COCE Career, which I'm putting in the chat box, at snhu.edu. And yes, we are here for you anytime you need us.
Awesome. And did you happen to share those links from the presentation as well in the chat? I think someone had asked for those too. If not, that's totally okay. Great. Awesome.
I think I did, but I think I only sent it to Dina. So I apologize to everyone. I think I have this on. I think I was emailing her privately. So let me go ahead and put it back in there. And I apologize. Here you go. Can you guys see that now?
Yes.
And I'll put the.
Great. Did anyone have any other questions or anything about anything in particular with creative writing, with the programs, future questions about what to do next, anything for our readers? This isn't a question, but Lenormand, I just wanted to put someone said that they really enjoyed the way that you described the swaying of the train like a trunk. It was vivid and definitely could imagine that in their head. So it was just a compliment, not so much a question. Just wanted to highlight it though. Yes, all three readers, very great visual representation. Lots to be able to just attach onto and just kind of go with and stuff. And I really appreciated each and every one of you tonight. It was wonderful. Lenormand and Jamie, how do you balance dialogue and description? Let's start with Jamie first, and then we can jump to Lenormand. With dialogue and description in your pieces, how do you find balancing those?
I think initially, just downloading it all and then kind of editing backwards, in a sense, just having that fluid flow of consciousness, replaying the memories if it's particularly writing about a particular incident, and putting that dialogue in. And then as you go back and edit, you can kind of take out what isn't flowing. But definitely for my personal experience, just letting it all gush out, and then you can always take away.
I find that one of your best tools for character development is dialogue, because you can describe somebody all day long and you will never get as much character development as you do when they're speaking. So I try to save my description for things that cannot speak for themselves. like the environment or some item or a scene. You know, I try to do that, or I'll use description as a way for my character to express how they're feeling. There's a scene in the novel where there's a cave-in at the mine, and my main character, Alifair, she is thinking about everything that she's seeing and how it relates to her life. And does she really want to live this way? Does she want to keep going this way? Her husband does, but she doesn't. And that's a big part of the conflict.
I really like that statement about description serving for those moments where the character cannot speak, or for things that cannot speak for themselves, that don't have a voice. I think that's beautifully put. I see a question here in the chat for Jamie or Amanda, or both, about any tips on opening up such deep emotions in writing. It seems like both of you are really going pretty deep there. Jamie, you managed to touch on a lot of heartfelt stuff, but you kind of leavened it with humor. Whereas Amanda, there was some humor evident in yours as well, but I felt it was like more of like a straight on engagement with those deep feelings. So Jamie, I see you're up, so maybe you can answer that first.
I think initially, and this is where my career in yoga and practice of yoga has helped me, is initially giving yourself that permission to download those emotions, to recognize them and to write them, especially when you're writing about other people. There's that people pleasing element where you're like, oh, I don't want to offend anyone. I don't want to write anything down that could hurt their feelings. And just giving yourself that initial permission slip to say, hey, yes, write it down. They may or may not see it. And if they do, it's an opportunity to dialogue and work through it. But having that initial conversation with yourself, and as you write, you realize that someone else will probably initially have shared that same experience and can connect to it as well.
Well, I mean, you could certainly see that. I don't know if you were able to look at the chat as you were reading, but it was just amazing that people were chiming in and saying, oh, I completely relate to that emotion. I relate to the scene. This is something that I have lived through. I think that was a real strength of your work. So at least I certainly enjoyed it quite a bit. Amanda, what about you? Could you answer that question?
Yes. For myself, I know it's different when you're writing poetry. And so in this piece in particular, I was looking to sort of reflect emotions visually. So specifically in the poem where it's a funeral and it's winter, reflecting the emotion on what the weather looked like outside, how the river was completely frozen over, cold and dry, and waiting in line to even enter the funeral, knowing what emotions would lie ahead or had already become unraveled. And so I like to play with that visual representation of what the character, fiction or nonfiction, may be feeling, may be dealing with.
Thank you very much. One other thing I liked about your collection, I mean, I could see that it was a suite of poems that are tracing the life of a character. And I wonder if you could talk about that really quickly as a kind of a narrative structure for poetry.
Yes, it was something new. I hadn't really approached poetry in that way before, but as I said in the opening, it was the idea that I was working towards processing trauma, separated from, trauma from self. And so I thought, well, what if it's a reflection of moments in life, highlights in life or lowlights in life, and represent this small collection like a timeline.
No, it was super effective and really interesting. And I don't mean to cut anybody short, but I see that we're coming up on the end of our time here. And I just want to thank all of our readers so much offer them all of our congratulations on their graduation and their achievements. And that goes for, as Jacob said at the outset, everybody that has worked so hard during this pandemic year. And I want to thank Sonia as well for providing us with such great and useful information.
Yes, thank you so much, everyone, for coming. And there is a link on the website, or penmanreview.com up there as well. You may want to check that out. It's a literary journal that's at that is run and accepts submissions. Start testing out the submission territory with literary journals and stuff. Submission information, guidelines, and readings, lots of readings are available at penmanreview.com. Thank you again, everyone, for coming. Thank you to Jamie, Amanda, and Lenormie for reading, and again for Sonia for presenting. Until next time, take care, everyone. Congratulations. We'll see you later.